Welcome back to Bleducation. I'm Mia.
And I'm Brando.
And we coming at you live with some information about some people that you should know. And if you do know, you'll learn more about.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
What are we talking about today?
All right. Today, I have titled this episode, The Color of Welfare.
What color is it?
Black.
Black.
Yeah. Blackity black.
Is that racist?
A little bit. But we're going to talk about why.
Oh, okay.
So,
all right.
To give a little background as to why I chose this and what we're talking about today, I love FDR. Like, FDR is one of my favorite presidents.
Wheelchair? FDR? Yeah. I just
go.
wanted to make sure we're talking about the same.
You didn't even have to do that. All right. Yes, that one.
Okay.
But FDR is one of my favorite presidents. He's one of the only presidents to ever be elected for 4 terms, even though he does die like 3 months into his 4th term. But we don't talk about that. He's elected 4 times because the people love the man, okay?
And stress that. Oh,
he did. I mean,
World War II.
If you were a president that long, you died too. You feel me? But the reason that I love FDR is because he creates what we call the New Deal. So the New Deal comes around right after the Great Depression, 1933 to about 1939. We get multiple revamps of this New Deal. But essentially what he's trying to do with this is to alleviate the economic issues of the Great Depression. So what he does is he sits back and he's like, Great Depression is happening. This is terrible. Hoover had been president before and they dogged this man out. Like he's president during the Great Depression. They literally called towns where people were sleeping on the street Hoovervilles, just because they felt like he did not handle it right. Like it was a thing, right?
People broke, they mad.
Yeah, big mad. No, for real, big mad, right? So FDR comes on the scene. He's like, you know what? I got something for y'all. He was like, my first 100 days in office, I'm solving all the problems. All right. So he comes straight out the gate with, again, the New Deal. He divides it into what he calls the 3 R's. So it's relief, reform, and recovery. Relief is going to be immediate relief. Okay. So if you need food, we're going to provide that. Right. If you need money, we got you. All right. Reform is going to be long lasting initiatives. Things like Social Security come out of the New Deal.
Okay.
And then we're going to see recovery, which is going to be not short term, not long term, but something that deals with the economy at that particular time. Because we know the economy fluctates. There's nothing that you could do long term that could help the economy, right?
Okay.
So he divides it like that. And what we see happen is he does these pockets so that he can tackle these different issues. So we see things like the National Industrial Recovery Act. And what this does is it keeps wages and prices above market level. So you're making more money, but it's going to cost you a little bit more to purchase anything. So what ends up happening is that basically Black people get fired because now we're having to pay you more money. Wow. And their rationale is oh, you're not even worth minimum wage, right? Wow. So while overall plan, great idea, right? Because we're raising the bar in all aspects. We're meeting people where they're at, but it backfires on Black people, okay?
It's very interesting that you say this because we are currently, I don't know if... with this pandemic that's happened, a lot of people who don't want to work right now.
Yeah, I don't
work. Me either. Thank God I have a job though. But let me knock on. All right, cool.
Any day.
All right, look. But now you have this generation of people where they don't want to spend all their time working, or they would rather work remote. So they are talking about what their worth is.
Yeah.
Actually. So I wonder, but at the same time, prices are going up.
Yeah,
So
and inflation.
I just renewed my lease on my rent, and I got to pay $100 extra now on my rent. But
that's crazy.
Counting my blessings because some people are paying 2 or 3,
and you got a place to live.
Yeah, so
but, I think the interesting thing when you talk about something like the New Deal is the fact that it provided opportunities for a bunch of different people. So you also have the Civilian Conservation Corps. Mm-hmm. So they're going to focus on actually getting people out into the wilderness, and they're conservation. They're literally out. And then we
Black
also
people out there, Black people going to be out.
It was some Black people, but remember, we're talking about racism, so not too many.
Okay, all right.
But you also see things, and I can't remember the name of the actual program, but they were literally in charge of just going into different schools and different places and painting murals. That was their only job. So they provided a lot to different people. The issue with the New Deal, again, is that a lot of these practice segregation and a lot of the initiatives that they have backfired on Black people. So we have the Agricultural Adjustment Act, and the purpose, obviously, working on farm production and forcing up the price of food. So saying you're only going to produce this amount, you're only going to do this, you're only going to do that. But what happened? Less production, less farm workers. We know at this time, Black people are rooted in agricultural work. There's not much else that they can do.
Sharecropping.
Right. Sharecropping is what they're doing at this point. And so, again, that backfires on Black people. They don't get any type of help or assistance with that. We have Social Security, which triple taxes. But it also discouraged employers from hiring Black people because you were paying more to have people on your staff. And if I'm going to have to pay more for anybody, it's going to be a white person. That's essentially like how that went. But like when you talk about something like the New Deal, it's one of the biggest, one of the first big government initiatives that we have to take care of its people. And when we get it, it's centered around white people, right?
Of course.
So they love it. That's why, again, FDR is elected for 4 terms. They love it. It caters to them. And when we look at something like the Great Depression, even throughout this time, you have them having like soup kitchens, you have bread lines to give food to white people who are struggling at this time, right? Yeah. And the focus is white people.
So, but didn't Black people, didn't they like FDR too?
Let's talk about it. They loved FDR because, again, this is not the intent of his program, right? The intent is not to be racist, but you also have other people that are in charge of this program that are making it racist. Again, people love it because it caters to white people, right? You're a struggling white man, I got a job for you. Okay, your family's struggling, come to my church. We'll feed you. We'll take care of the kids. Like, all these things are happening at this time, and FDR sets the standard for what it means for a government to be helpful, right? He has a very, very strong central, central government. He sets the tone, right? I love the guy, man. I cannot talk about this man enough, right? So as we move throughout history, though, we see this shift start to happen, right? So again, welfare at this time based on white people. They're the only ones getting it. Segregation is happening. We move into LBJ. Okay. When we get to Lyndon B. Johnson, he creates what's called the Great Society, which is modeled after FDR's New Deal. With the Great Society, what we see happen is he is going to focus on Black people. He like, listen, I know who got me into office.
Mr. Johnson.
Right. He like, I know who got me into office. I know who my target demographic is. Like, I got him, right? Yes. So with him, we're going to see Black families' income increase by like 50%. Okay. Black employment is going to double. That's times 2, period. And it's like a big turning point for welfare, though, because when we see that happen and people are noticing like, oh my God, he's kind of catering to Black people and making sure they're good, we're going to see welfare become this like red stain, right? It's like, oh, you're getting help from the government. Could be me. Like, it's this immediate turn, but it's because it's catered to Black people. And that's like, it's so triggering to me almost, because when, again, origins of welfare, obviously helping white people, because we know that the government does not cater to us. And even with the Great Society, it's not necessarily that he's leaving out white people. It's just he realizes what a disadvantage Black people have. And he's like, what do I do to get them on this level playing field? How do I help these people get to a point where they can be successful? And white people fucking hate it.
You know, I feel like it just kind of goes into, a lot of times if things are not centered around white people and white progress, they have an issue with it. And I think that's why even with Black spaces, you know, like if a lot of white people like to play this reverse racism card, or like to love to be victim, you know, because they want to center issues, especially Black issues, and make themselves the focal point of that. But when you're talking about welfare, I'm not sure if this is true, but I thought the statistics show that even today that aren't more white people on welfare than Black people.
Yes. And so you're absolutely correct. But just looking at the breakdown of the demographic of the United States, that would just simply make sense, right? There are more of them than there are of us. When we break down, Black versus white, if we're looking at that aspect, there are more of them than there are of us. So in theory, there should be more of them on welfare, you know what I'm saying, on getting food stamps and things like that. The issue comes when now it's like, oh, it's a Black mama on here and all she do is take from the government. She don't work. She don't do this. She don't do that. When the reality of the situation is, first of all, period. And also, if you are not making enough to have a living wage, maybe the government should be stepping in and giving money. Like, regardless of your race, creed, national, whatever you are.
And we're in a damn pandemic. Like,
I know
that people are not wearing their masks anymore, but like there are people who are literally still struggling, who literally took a hit during this pandemic, and they are still not in a position where they're able to recover. Okay.
Right.
There are people who do not have the same advantages as other people. Yes, there are a bunch of jobs that are open now, right? That's the big thing, right?
Yeah,
But
everybody's
however,
hiring.
everyone's hiring, but still, we're not going to sit here and act like there are not discriminatory practices
Right, for
when it comes to
sure.
hiring people, especially people of color.
Yes.
Okay. White people are always going to have an advantage when it comes to being hired, okay, over
Yeah.
black people.
And I just think it's interesting because, like, as we go through presidents, obviously they all have their own focus and initiative, right?
Right.
When we look at Obama, his big thing was affordable healthcare, right? And now Obamacare is another thing that is seen as like a black people thing. Oh, you need help from the government to get your healthcare. But again, something that is aimed at everybody. So my question, I guess, that I'm posing for today is, why do we think that once black people get access or have more assistance that it becomes an issue? Because again, we've been spending the same money doing the same things, but once black people get a hold of it, it's an issue. And I'm going to counter that with this idea of thinking about how black people set standards, right? So when we look at like clothing, attitude, vernacular, all those things, we set the standard for, like, they want to be us, but when it comes to actually getting help and getting things, it's we the issue, right? So why do you think that is?
So that's a very loaded question.
It is. Sorry, it's a lot.
No, it's okay. It's okay. So I think that welfare has gotten this negative connotation, and it just allows white people, I think, to do a couple of different things. Okay.
Mhm.
I think it allows them to feel like they're in a position of power.
Okay.
So there definitely isn't equity there. So
Mhm.
and then I want to revisit the white savior complex. Yes. So I think that it's, and sometimes in white people's eyes, okay, yeah, these black people are on welfare, they're getting assistance, right? And then they want to go and do their good deed or whatever like that, because black people are you know looked at as poor or inequitable or these different things like that. So I think it's a societal thing. There's actually a show called The Gilded Age that's on.
I didn't mean to watch that. Yeah,
it's really good on HBO. But on the show, there is the main character. She's a white woman, and one of her really good friends is a free black woman, and when she actually goes and visits, she shows up unannounced at the black woman's house, and they're actually pretty affluent, which is probably not really heard of during that time period. But she literally had came and she had brought some shoes like for charity because she assumed that these black people were poor, and they took offense to it as they should. But and the thing was, the way that it was written so the episode was written so beautifully, because that she did not do it to be malicious or snooty, right? But it's just like, read the room. And I think that sometimes white people, they look at there's definitely a mix. Okay, so you have white people who are upset because they feel like black people are not doing anything, but they're receiving all these benefits from society. Those are the group of white people I like to say are like the get over it. It's the ones that say slavery happened like 200 years ago. You need to get over it. Those people, right? And then you have the other white people who just need to, again, center everything and make it around them. So I think they feel offended that, and they feel like a lot of white people don't recognize their privilege, I don't think.
Oh, for sure.
And so they look at this government assistance or welfare as a privilege that is being exclusive towards minorities, and they feel like, oh, well, I'm white, so why don't I get that?
I've actually never thought about it like that, that being like an afforded privilege for people. And that's not to say, because first of all, there are many issues like when we talk about government assistance, like we don't even have time to really get into that. But I think I've never looked at it as like, oh, that's a privilege that people of color have. And not to say that it is, but I've never just thought about it from that perspective of being like, oh, well, I don't get this, so what is that? Because I mean, when we talk about getting assistance, I've been trying and nobody want to give me none. So you know what I mean? Or like when we look at
times I tried to get food stamps.
Listen, and nobody will approve me.
Like,
oh my,
no, I was in college eating ramen noodles every day,
and they big no. But like looking at thinking about my parents, not that we're just, incredibly wealthy or anything like that, but like when I went to college, I didn't get any financial aid. I didn't get anything. And it was baffling to me that a lot of people just assumed that I did. And it was because I was Black. You know what I mean? Like my parents paid for my school out of pocket and they were blessed to be able to do that. But I think a lot of the issue is that there are just these assumptions that we have about certain people. Yes. And these biases. And I mean, we're victim of that too, perpetrating it and as a responsive thing. But I think that it's just so interesting to see how people interact with like different concepts like that. Because again, welfare starts as this just community thing where we're helping people out. Because again, it centers back to the Great Depression, where it was really churches and Christian white women that were kind of just like, man, everybody out here struggling, everybody's doing these things. Let's like make sure that they're taken care of. Like bread lines were for everybody, soup kitchens were for everybody, and it wasn't about whether you're a Black, white, whatever. Yes. Even though I'm sure racism went on there, but
I think in that instance, though, I think it was more so everybody was struggling, so it was easier to be equitable and not necessarily think about race during that time because everyone was kind of down bad. By the time LBJ is in office, white people are fine, in general economically, but Black people have just always kind of had these disadvantages, especially when it comes to economics. They have not, we're coming off the end of integration now. So now it's just like we talked in previous episodes, we talked about integration. That's really going to juxtapose the inequalities that Black people have versus white people, because now they're starting to interact more and white people are coming out on top. Then also another thing that I see with when we're talking about welfare is when I want to touch on what you said about the assumptions, right? Mm-hmm. So the assumptions is that if a Black person is on welfare, that they're lazy or that they're abusing the system. There are a bunch of negative associations with that. Also, it's looked at as Black people are definitely going to be the ones to commit fraud, right? Or they're going to do something illegal in taking advantage of, government assistance. Mm-hmm. And that just goes to show that there are certain stereotypes that are ingrained in some white people when it comes to looking at Black people, where we're inherently looked at as violent or we're inherently looked at as criminals or things like that. So it's not going to be any kind of different when it comes to discussing like welfare or those different things like that. So I think there's just a lot of reasons why white people might be mad. But at the end of the day, facts are facts. And white people are on welfare more often than Black people.
And we started to tell y'all the truth, but it just is. But like I think welfare has always been one of those things. It's kind of like, where do we go from here? Because I believe in a very, very large central government. I believe that our government should take care of its people, because why are we paying taxes if not? You know what I'm saying? Why am I giving money back if not to establish systems that take care of the American people? I do absolutely believe in that. And I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, well, I make this amount. I don't believe in any of that. I mean, you can call me what you want, but I do tend to favor things like socialism and communism, because I do believe that everybody should be taken care of at the expense of the state. It is what it is in my eyes. I don't believe anybody should be struggling bill to bill or have to rely on food stamps or things like that to make sure that they have housing for themselves and their children. I don't believe you should have to work to death to be taken care of. That's just not my own personal belief. But again, when we talk about welfare, there is just this stigma that it's this terrible thing, but the reality of it is some people just need it. You know what I'm saying? Careful. Some people are abusing it, but
you got to be careful. McCarthy might hear you from his grave.
Listen, he gonna rise. All right, because listen, McCarthyism, and we have to talk about McCarthyism. That has just came up so many times.
We do. We have to talk about it. We will do an episode on McCarthyism.
Yeah, it's has to.
We'll talk about it.
All right. That is the color of welfare, y'all. Again, I hope y'all learned something. Just don't fall victim to these white people and their stereotypes. You know what I'm saying? If you need it, you need it. You know what I'm saying? It is what it is.
If you got some food stamps, if you call me. I need that.
There's a 50 cent dollar.
I'm trying to eat steak and lobster
every
day too.
On their dime.
All right. On their dime. All right. I am Brando.
I'm Mia.
All right. We'll catch you next time.
Peace.
What up? It's your boy, Brando from the Bando. Actually, I'm from the suburbs, not the Bando, but that's okay. I'm here to say thanks for watching the Polaris Network on YouTube. For exclusive shows and premium content, subscribe to the Polaris Network on YouTube right now. Seriously, what are you doing? Go subscribe. Go do it right now.